Welcome to the Tony the Prophet channel for the divisional round of the playoffs. We got four great games this week. I spent a lot of time breaking them down. But first, I got to talk about last week. I thought this is unbelievable. You have Harbaugh in the smash spot against a team, the Houston Texans, that were reeling, okay, not playing well coming into this game. They kind of, Joe Mixon and Collins and the whole team, they lost Diggs, they lost Dell. And then you have a Harbaugh coach team off the national championship. The guy's been money in the playoffs in his whole career, and they lay an egg. They had Houston on the rope for a quarter and a half, but they can't score in the red zone. They had two field goals. Okay, they left the door open, and then Herbert, who had only 3 picks all year, throws 4 picks in the game and gives the game away. Bad roster construction, I guess. Ultimately, you got 2 has-been running backs for the Chargers, and they have McConkey. That's it. Quentin Johnson's a drop king. He's a bust. So that's that game. That was a smash spot. I can't play for these players, okay? And then the other game is the Tampa Bay Washington. Baker Mayfield. Now you know why this guy is a journeyman, plays on a million teams, because he can't get it done, okay? Baker fumbles in his own end inside the 10-yard line to give him the game, and then he had a pick earlier in the game. They ran like 42 plays. This should have been a smash spot. You usually can't run against Tampa Bay. They knew they had to throw. They only ran Tampa like 42 plays, and then Washington, with a miracle, gets a doink in. The game's going to overtime. I was hoping that I could cover in overtime, but anyways, Baker is who he is. Dennis Green said they are who he thought they were, and he stinks. So he had a good year, but in the crunch time, forget about it. So let's get to this week. There's 4 good games. 1's even. 3 should be smash spots. Let me get my notes. So we got first game, KC. Minus 8.5. I'm laying the points in this one. Andy Reid, 2 weeks to prepare. He's going to come out with some wrinkles. Unfortunately, Texans will play well last week, turned into a pumpkin. The only way they can win is if they can get the same kind of pressure against Herbert. What does Herbert do? He runs out of the pocket. He needs 3rd and 8. How many times have you seen him in a big spot get the 9 yards running the ball, okay? His prop is like 24.5 yards rushing. In this game, it's free money. Historically, Chiefs have not been a good cover team. They're like, they won 7 games. They win these one-possession games. They won 7 games as a favorite of less than 6 points or more, but they don't cover them. But I think today's the exception. KC, not a great spread team. 3-8 against the spread the last 11. 7-9-1 against the spread for the year. 3-5 at home. Believe it or not, that they don't cover as much at home. Houston's a mediocre team against the spread. They're 500, 8-8-2, 4-4-1 home or away. So that's pretty even as far as that goes. But, they just played in Week 16, and Kansas City won 27-19. So here's what I do. It's a good game for Spags. I double Collins, and I stack the box and let somebody else beat me. Although I do like Schultz over his yards and maybe even a touchdown, and I like Mechie. So if they're going to double Collins and he has an off day, the only 2 people they're going to throw to, and you saw that they went to Schultz last week a lot and dump off, so he should do well. But Mixon is questionable. He should play, but he's not going to have a big day against that Kansas City defense. Spag will dial up some pressures. And I even like KC anytime defense touchdowns, plus 425. Put $10 on that, you make a quick 40. So I have the game Kansas City 27-13. The way I played this for easy money, I teased the Kansas City down to 2.5, and I took the under up to 47.5. So, I don't think there'll be a lot of points scored in this game. I don't think Houston scores more than 16. I have them at 13. The only chance they have is that the only weak spot on Kansas City is their old line. If they can get the kind of pressure they got last week, but again, Mahomes runs out, and I think that's about it. So you go to the next game, Detroit laying 8.5. You have a Detroit team at home, well rested from taking the bye, and you have Montgomery back, and this should be a smash spot for Detroit. The only way that Washington can win is throwing the ball deep, getting some McLaurin bombs, which I like McLaurin over his yards, and getting pass interference, something like that. But you got Montgomery coming back, and you see that they have a great O-line. So they're going to run the ball early and set up the throws. I put for the king of the end zone on DraftKings. They have a promotion. You can bet who can get the longest touchdown. They have like a $2 million pool spread up over the playoffs, and they give you free bets back. I put in Williams for Detroit. You can even put in McLaurin. I think both of those guys have long touchdowns. Detroit, number 1 in points scored. Washington, number 2 in pass yards, 263. Number 6 in rush yards, 146. Number 3 in yards per play, 6.23. Washington's good against the pass, but they're 30th against the run. They give up 137 yards. I think Detroit have much more than that. And Detroit's 5th versus the rush, and Washington's 3rd rushing. So I don't think Washington's going to be able to run the ball at all. So you have Daniels going to be throwing all day, probably bet over his attempts. And that's when the Detroit line, you got 2 good lines here, so they could be vulnerable. And let's face it, folks, Washington's the luckiest team in the league. They've won 7 games in the last 6 seconds. They won it last week with the doink field goal. Everybody knows against Chicago, they had the Hail Mary, and they had a bunch of these games all year where they kick a last-minute field goal and win the game. So, the only thing is with the pass rush of Detroit, they're going to force Daniels out of the pocket. I like over his rush yards for that. But and then Gibbs is 5.1 yards on outside zone runs, which they'll get him going against Washington. So smash spot for Detroit at home. I have it 34-20. I think it goes just under 55.5 is a lot of points for a team like Detroit that's going to run a lot, okay? And they're both teams, probably the most in the NFL, go for it on 4th down. So if they don't make it and put up threes, you're going to be losing points. So I think it's under the thing. You can do the same thing I did in the other. I have them better, but you could take Detroit down to 2.5 and then put the under to 61.5. That should be enough points. I mean, the game could shoot out with both these teams, but easy peasy for Detroit. I think they're destined for the Super Bowl, and at home, rested, they're going to handle their business against a Washington team with a rookie quarterback that's up and coming. They're another draft, they'll be lethal, but not this year. And then next game, we got Philly -6. I love Philadelphia. You got West Coast team that just played on Monday night, coming across the country to play in the snow. And Stafford, for over a decade, was the Lions quarterback. He played in the dome. Stafford in rain or snow games. And then the West Coast, he doesn't get a lot of weather now, but he's 1-8, 54.6% completion percentage, touchdowns, interceptions, 14-11. So Philly at home, snow game. What do they like to do? They'll run the ball. Big game for Barkley. Rams are not that great against the tight end. I could see Goddard having 50 yards, 4 or 5 catches, and a touchdown. uh, Philly 12-6 against the spread. They won like 12 of the last 13. 8-2 against the spread the last 10. 6-1-1 against the spread versus the Rams the last 8 games. Well, they don't in the same division. They don't play a lot, but they've kind of owned them over the years. I put some of that with a grain of salt. Some of those teams, none of the players are still there, but the I just think it's a smash spot for Philly at home in a snowstorm. They run the ball. Game probably goes under. I have it Philly 28-14, and I think it's an easy win for the Eagles. And Cuppa hasn't been doing much for the Rams lately, and Puka will get some of his yards, but it's going to be in the snow, so that's an easy game. And now I come to the hardest game to pick, maybe the hardest game to pick for the year. My head says Baltimore Ravens should kill them, but my heart's saying that I can't see Buffalo this year with all they've done, losing at home in a cold weather game. Supreme matchup. This game could be like the best game, including the Super Bowl. You got two teams that score over 30 points a game. Baltimore runs for 194 yards a game, and this is the whole thing. Now, the last time they played in Week 4. Buffalo had some people out on defense, and they're not playing as well as they did. And that game got away from him. If you remember, Henry got an 87-yard touchdown like within 4 minutes, and they fumbled after that. Buffalo did, and the game was like 21-3 at the half. So that game was over, and then they blew some other chances. Later, Buffalo missed a field goal, and so I think that now I got to look at the phone. Now I have some data here I want to pull up. That Jackson, okay, he was 2-4 in this season, coming into this year into the playoffs. So Jackson's been tremendous quarterback in the regular season, winning like 75-80% of his games. In the playoffs, he was 2-4 historically. Now they won last week pretty easily against a Pittsburgh team that's done. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have receivers. They just cover Pickens and they're done. So, anyways, but here is Jackson. In the opening game in the playoffs, he's 3-0. It's the only game he's won. He has a QBR of 87.4, 4 touchdowns to 1 interception. They run a lot. And then completion percentage 73%. But in the second game of the playoffs, okay, he's 0-2. QBR is 44. TD to interceptions, one TD, 2 interceptions, and he has a completion percentage of 56%. And I got to tell you, when I watch these games, you watch Jackson when it's cold, when he plays in Baltimore, and I'm not saying the cold, he's not Tua that goes to the cold, it's automatic win. You could bet the mortgage. He's 1-7 in below 40 degrees games, but he's got that headpiece that comes over like Under Armour thing that covers his head. You can just see his eyes. I mean, I don't think he likes the cold, but this game is very close. Both these teams are good against the spread, good at covering, so you don't have an advantage there. But I just can't see Buffalo at home, where they're undefeated this year, blowing this game. And it's a one, the spread is right. I have Buffalo winning, and I could be wrong. Ravens could blow them out again. Their run game is awesome with Henry and Jackson. They could give Buffalo defense trouble. But, the other three I'm way more confident on. But I have it like Buffalo 31-30, 28-27, 30-28, and they could lose. But I think this is Allen's year at home. And then you take the history of Jackson not doing well after the fact in the playoffs. prove me wrong. So that's about it. So some great games. Then we get to the Final Four next week. It'll be tremendous. But anyways, that's it. I could be wrong on Buffalo. I admit it. My head says Ravens, but I can't see them on the road with Jackson and everything. So I'll take the risk there. I don't think I really bet that game. I bet the others. I think they're a lot easier, and you could tease those. But anyways, so that's it. Enjoy this. My opinion, this is the best week. You get the 8 best teams left. And the other thing that's interesting, I'll throw that out there, and why the Giants need to get a real quarterback is that 7 of the 8 quarterbacks playing in this playoff round were drafted in the first round. And the only one that isn't is Hurts, and he was drafted early second round. He was like pick 40, 42. So it just goes to show, if you don't have a quarterback, you're done. So with that note, have a great week. We'll see you next week for Championship Sunday, and take care.